President-elect Donald Trump may have unequivocally endorsed Congressman Mike Johnson to keep his speakership, but some Republicans are still not done trying to oust him. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, for instance, tweeted yesterday, as Congress debates re-electing the accidental Speaker Mike Johnson, conservatives across the country should remember that Speaker Mike cast the deciding vote to allow a secret court, FISA, to search American records without a warrant and to send $60 billion to Ukraine. Pathetic. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie has long fought Johnson's role as Speaker. Here's a recent tweet from him. For months, Democrats ignored the fact that Joe Biden was a potato. They convinced themselves that keeping him around was the pragmatic way to win the day. Too late did they admit the emperor had no clothes. Republicans are doing the same thing by keeping Speaker Mike Johnson.
Other Republicans are pushing back, though. New York Congressman Mike Lawler went on CNN last week to make the case for Johnson. Here he is.
You cannot do anything until you elect a speaker. So, from my vantage point, that would be the height of stupidity to get into a protracted speaker battle. Mike Johnson won the vote within the conference to serve another term as speaker. He has worked tirelessly to help give us this majority.
Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich also voiced his frustration with anti-Johnson Republicans this week. I do not understand what the contrarian House Republicans think they will gain by opposing Speaker Mike Johnson. They have no one who can get more votes. They risk crippling President Trump's electoral win on January the 6th. They are, in effect, allies of the Democrats. I challenge them to explain what their end game is other than noise, Gingrich wrote. The vote will take place Friday as the new Congress gets underway. So, Robby, what do you make of all this? I mean, Thomas Massie and Rand Paul would be fairly closely aligned with your views,
yes,
I would imagine. They obviously have a serious objection to Speaker Johnson, as he still is for the moment. He will seek re-election again. But basically because of spending and the FISA authorization or reauthorization. But it doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of votes. Of course, Johnson doesn't have much room for maneuver.
Doesn't take a whole lot of votes, and obviously Rand Paul is not in the House, so his is just an ideological objection. Yeah. These are two figures who I value quite a bit. I would say that Massie speaks for a lot of Republican primary voters, at least, a lot of people out there who have called on Congress, their Republican coalition, to do more on just those issues you raised, on Ukraine funding, for one thing, on FISA courts. I mean, Donald Trump himself, the Republican leadership, has become more aware of how these policies that I would argue violate our civil liberties can be weaponized against them, and ran on doing something about it, and have a speaker who's just kind of, the argument is part of the establishment. Again, why did you ask Kevin McCarthy to replace him with someone who has the exact same policies as Kevin McCarthy? And this happens over and over again. It's the endless cycle of, from Boehner to Ryan to McCarthy, now to Johnson, of people like Massie agitating for someone who is going to reflect actual conservative priorities. A person makes promises, they think they will do that, gets into the speaker position, and then does the exact same things as the previous speaker. So it might make you just resign to having governance that is not according to the will of Thomas Massie and the people who support him, unfortunately. But he's saying he has nothing to lose. Why not try? Now, Trump is supporting Johnson, and this does show that there are sometimes differences within the MAGA category. Rand Paul and Thomas Massie have agreed with Trump and defended him on a lot, but they are more libertarian-minded, and they've occasionally criticized picks he's made or policies he's pursued, like tariffs and other things. This is another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a slightly different view, though I see where that argument that you're making is coming from, or where it's rooted. There is also, as well as the Thomas Massies and the Chip Roys and the Rand Pauls of the world, there are a certain number of Republican members of Congress who represent at least competitive districts, sometimes Democratic-leaning districts, and they quite understandably are not so eager as Thomas Massie might be to have somebody pursue an absolutely, I don't even mean dogmatic in the negative sense, but a very strongly fiscally conservative, strongly libertarian view. And those people have a right to have their views considered as well. The other point is, at the end of the day, as a matter of political reality, the government and the House has to work to some degree, to some rudimentary level. And so I think the danger of a kind of a Chip Roy, Thomas Massie kind of approach is that the whole thing just seizes up because they say, no, we're not going along with this. They've absolutely the right to do that. But then does government shut down? Do you end up in a situation of default? All of those potentially baleful consequences.
But let's not forget that over the past 10 years or so, the way the House operates has changed dramatically to favor the Speaker's power above all else. Individual members were lost for a long time the ability to bring their own amendments to the floor without the approval of the Speaker. Justin Amash, a former congressman who I quite like, we've interviewed on Rising a few times, has explained from a procedural standpoint the work of the House has just ground to a halt. You no longer have issues being debated and then voted on by the chamber. Things only get to the voting part. They only get to the floor if they have the Speaker's blessing. And that prevents robust and healthy debate taking place on a variety of issues. It ends up being an all or nothing thing, and that is unhealthy for democracy. It's not functioning the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's completely a fair point, and I think it is a part of a broader picture of centralization of power among party leaderships.
The point being, if the Speaker is going to wield dictatorial, consistent with the norms of the body, but if it's all going to be policy done by the Speaker, well, then it should be someone in line with the actual agenda they were elected to implement. You could have a Speaker whose views are a little bit more centrist leaning in the Republican coalition. If it's still, well, everybody can bring whatever they want to the floor and we'll debate and discuss it. But if it all has to go through him, having someone who's at odds with a significant chunk of the base, not ideal.
No, but I mean, is it really fair, though, to say that Mike Johnson is at odds with a significant chunk of the base? Like, Mike Johnson's a pretty conservative guy. Now, he has made the decision that government has to be kept open, and therefore he has made deals that displease some people on the most fiscally hawkish level. But, this isn't, Mitt Romney we're talking about here. I mean, this is somebody who is, particularly in the social realm, very conservative views.
Well, he's very socially conservative, sure. He's also ardently, if not neoconservative, like Mitch McConnell, seems to have a lot of funding priorities for our friends and allies across the world, which I would say is no longer the biggest priority of MAGA, and in fact there's some pushback in MAGA to having that be the way we do business. Obviously, there's disagreement in the Republican coalition on what makes you conservative. Does that mean some more Bush-era conservatives would say, no, it is conservative, it's very right-leaning to support robustly funding a country under attack by Russia, and there are other people saying, no, that's selling out America first, that's not conservative at all, that's something rhinos and liberal Democrats want to do. So it's just a debate. Yes. Yeah. But he fits he would be it would not be controversial to say he's very conservative by the standards of 10 years ago. But the party's changed.
No, the party definitely has changed. I do think that the main problem the dissenters face is it's not obvious who they would put up who could command the support of the Republican conference.
Yeah. Well, it's not obvious that anyone can command the entire support
not Mike Johnson
of everyone. Stick around, more to come today on Rising.